Hi, everybody. Brianna here with Nurse Deck. Welcome to our interview series. As you know, Nurse Deck is a online collaborative social space for nurses built by nurses. We like to share resources, guides, camaraderie, humor, sob stories, basically any sanity savers for work-life balance. And today we are joined by Jiwon Lee, who is a current OR and PACU nurse for, it's the Colorado Center of Reproductive Medicine, right?
Yes.
That's what the C is for? Okay.
Yes.
CCRM in New York. And she has also recently been an adjunct professor at the Helene Fuld College of Nursing in New York. So welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
Tell us, we always like to start at the beginning. So tell us how you got into nursing, what inspired you to go down this path.
Okay. So I am originally from South Korea. I went to high school in the suburb of Toronto in Canada. And while I was deciding where to apply for college, I thought that I wanted to be a clinical psychologist because I really enjoyed sharing those vulnerable moments with my family and friends, and I thought I was a good listener. Mm-hmm. My mom used to be a nurse, and knowing who I am, my mom recommended that I go into nursing school and go into psychiatric nursing. So I was like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I applied for colleges in the US because that's where I wanted to go to school. And I was lucky that I got into Boston College. So that's how I started my
grounds as well.
Yes. So that's how I got into nursing in the first place.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And do you ever, at this point, do you feel like you chose the right path for yourself? Or do you ever think of like those big, comfy, overstuffed chairs you could be sitting in, helping people sift through their problems?
Yeah. Of course, there are like so many times. There is a myriad of times that I questioned whether I went into nursing, whether it was the right path for me. I once thought it was a calling for me, but I sobbed many times, like people share in nurse sec at work. But I believe nursing allowed me to be a better human being, not only as a better nurse, because you encounter so many different people, whether it's your team, whether it's your patients or their families. So over the period of time, I really think that it taught me to be a better person, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, that's a great perspective to have. I'm curious, how did you end up from Korea to Canada to go to high school? You said, did your whole family move or?
So my dad stayed in Korea because he had a business to take care of, and it was my mom and my brother who moved to Canada. And how I moved there was that I played ice hockey growing up, and a lot of my friends went to Canada to play. Because ice hockey in Canada is like football in the States.
Yeah, so, it's like the mothership of Canada. Yep.
Right. So that's how I first was like, oh, I want to go and like learn English and learn different culture too, without knowing what it entailed. Obviously, like it was hard to make friends because I didn't speak English, but I got through it. I'm here with Brianna.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
I see in your bio that you have a ton of volunteering experience. Can you speak a little bit about what motivates you to volunteer and how it has lent itself to your career now?
So volunteering for me initially was a way for me to build resume.
As it is for lots of people, I think.
Yeah. And whenever I went back home to Korea in college, I went back twice a year in the summer and the winter. I volunteer at different facilities with different population, from an international clinic to translate for patients, elderly people living alone to be their friend, or at a community health center to aid with music therapy for children with autism. So it really gave me an opportunity to see where people are in terms of medical and nursing needs
Mm.
in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And, there can be a lot of downtime when you do volunteering. And it's amazing how much you can learn by just building connection and asking questions and talk to somebody, whether it's your colleagues, volunteers, or the people you volunteer for. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that exposure really helped me become a nurse and worked as a nurse, whether it's your floor or at CCRM or as an adjunct faculty, because
Mm-hmm.
you have been in that situation talking to different people, a variety of people, and different topics and subjects.
Absolutely.
So I'm really glad that I did that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I think with nurses too, because sometimes you can get so specialized in your career,
Right.
and volunteering is such an awesome way to like dabble in different things.
Exactly.
But I 100% can relate to what you're saying about that. My background's in ER, but that was my favorite thing
see.
about like talking to, you never know who
Right.
you're going to get, but
Right,
it was like a fun challenge to be able to talk to anybody.
Okay.
Um,
Brianna, are you working as a nurse in the ER right now?
No, I'm home.
Okay.
Once I started a family, I have two
Okay.
sets of twins, so
I got it.
I was never able. I tried to get back in, and
Yeah.
it just became like a merry-go-round of like daycare and trying to find nannies and never seeing my husband. And
Right.
but now, yeah, I still, wear my nurse's hat, but in a different role now, working
see.
from home. So, yeah,
Okay.
I do miss it, but also like,
Yeah, I feel you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about healthcare entrepreneurship. I see that that's a big interest of yours. Why do you think that's important for healthcare?
So I actually got interested in entrepreneurship this summer, so recently, and I have my master's in health leadership and education. And while I was in my path to get my master's, I had CEOs of Johnson & Johnson or nurse entrepreneurs come and speak, and I was never interested in that concept. But now I see that there is so much improvement that nurses can bring.
Mhm.
And I recently learned the concept of entrepreneurship, which is
Okay.
entrepreneurship in a large organization. You don't have to have a title of CEO or CNO to be an innovator or
Right.
entrepreneur. Nurses at bedside, whether it's improving the way that you pass medication or improving a way you communicate with the members of the multidisciplinary team, you can innovate and make
Right.
workflow better. And I think that's a form of innovation.
Yeah.
And we do it every day. We just don't label it that way.
Right.
So that's how I see nurses' role improve or expand on.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's such a good point, because it can be a intimidating word or concept
Right.
for nurses
Right.
that maybe are feeling like they're over the bedside or want to do something else, but maybe aren't ready to take on like a whole new program of study. So to try to think like you could build on an idea that you're having and like, ta-da,
Exactly.
you're an entrepreneur,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. With your background in being an educator, is there anything that you'd like to share for nurses right now, nursing students in particular? I know it's been a challenging 18, 20 months to be a nursing student. So what have you
Right.
seen in your experience with nursing students?
Sometimes, so one big thing that I mentioned to them every week was that it's not about the skill sets or whether you can pass oral medications or hang an IV bag. It's about your open-mindedness.
Mm.
Be proactive to learn.
Mhm.
You may know how to do certain things, and you may have exposed to it working as a PCA or working as an LPN, but there's always something that you can learn more.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter that you have 20, 30 plus of experience. I have tremendous respect for those who do. But
Yeah.
there's something that you can always learn. And ask questions if you do. It's okay. If you don't know something, it's okay to ask questions. That shows other people that you're willing to learn and improve as a nurse and advocate for your patients. So I always emphasize to them, it's how you see your role as an advocate for your patients.
Yeah.
And don't be complacent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are definitely the students you're just like, oh boy, it's going to be a long few months. But that's such a good point. I think not just asking questions, obviously, like, so you don't make an error or do something that you're not comfortable with doing, patient safety wise, but also it projects an image to people that are in your environment that you want to learn, so that if they're doing something that's like obscure or that doesn't get done every day, they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna go grab Jiwon,
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. The next generation of nurses that are coming in, I feel like the seasoned and veteran nurses are relieved to see them, the influx of new blood and new energy coming in because they're exhausted. How do you think the next generations of nurses are going to be prepared for practice? Do you think they're bringing anything different to the table?
Because they are more used to the technology. So I was recently, a few weekends ago, I participated in Nurse Hack for Health.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We just interviewed Mary and Larry. So
yes. Oh, great.
So
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I went to Penn for my master's. So
That's right.
Okay, so I was talking to her about innovation in nursing and design thinking too. Yeah.
She's doing all sorts of really cool stuff.
So my team built a system helpful for nursing documentation. So we're still in the process of gathering information about pain points in nursing documentation. And one thing we learned was that veteran nurses are not as comfortable in documenting and typing, and it takes them longer period of time. Whereas the new nurses, it's very day-to-day technique or skills that they use. And I think technology is a huge part in healthcare nowadays, especially documentation. It's something that's tremendously important in the nursing field. So that's one thing that they can bring in the field of nursing and the innovation field. And the things that they learn in nursing school, like scientific knowledge, because things constantly change.
Yes.
So I think they can also introduce the new science data to the nurses who are currently practicing, and maybe they're not as attuned into those studies.
Yeah. Yep. That would probably be a steep learning curve to delicately approach those subjects with some older nurses. But I feel like the more we talk to nurses in the field right now, it seems like that tide is shifting for, the whole nurses eat their young concept. So hopefully older or more seasoned nurses are receptive to learning, new bits of research and methodology. If we ever get to a post-COVID world, what do you think nursing will look like?
I believe nursing will never die. It's not a field that can be, because there's so much emotion involved in it, it's not something that can be replaced by robots, or maybe it can be like helped or improved by technology that I was just talking about. But I recently was reading New York Times article about ICU nurses in Arizona, how they were the ones who was holding the patient's hand when they were dying because the patients couldn't come in. I think nurses will always be that group of people. Pre and post during COVID, we were there, and even after COVID, we will be there. So I'm sad that, the COVID burnt a lot of nurses out, but also I think more people saw the importance of healthcare providers and how we care for patients,
Right.
especially during this time of
Yeah.
in the world. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100,000,000% agree, that there's never gonna be a replacement for that, no
right.
matter what it looks like, decades from now. What would you say are the major challenges that nurses face right now?
I think it's a burnout. When I moved to New York in October last year, during COVID, and I started in an emergency room. And I moved from Nebraska, so it was
Oh,
a
wow.
culture change, and
Yeah.
also I worked in med surg and then ER, so it was also the population change.
Mhm.
And I was able to work there 6 months, and I felt like a failure
Oh.
because I was like, why can't I do this? I was really burnt out though. Now I think about it, it was just not healthy for me emotionally and physically. So
Mhm.
that's why I decided to move on.
Mhm.
But it's not only me, but also my colleagues, my coworkers. The more I talk to them, we're all on the same page. It's very
Mhm.
difficult to go to work and take care of a lot of patients.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think, years ago, you would have, like, a bad shift, but then, you get to work the next day and you recover and you're like, "Bad days happen,"
right,
it's not gonna be every day, but
right,
just the psychological toll of going to a job where you feel like there's things that you could be doing
right,
well, but
right,
there's just no logistical way to make that happen. I
right.
mean, I think nurses are gonna be dealing with that fallout for years from now.
I know,
You're gonna need
unfortunately. Yeah.
a lot of support for that, and patients too. I mean, I think people view going to the ER differently now than they did,
Mhm,
before.
mhm,
I know, so right now you work in reproductive medicine,
mhm,
and, I know in speaking to my sister who's also a nurse that they had to put a lot of holds on people's plans,
mhm.
for IVF and different fertility assistance methods, um, and just seeing the impact that that had on patient populations too,
Right,
and dealing I think nurses are like the emotional sponge for people,
right.
and so just absorbing all of that over time, it makes me worried, for nurses, but also,
Mm.
like we were saying, the new influx of new nurses coming in will hopefully breathe some life into.
Yes, and I think that's why the community is so important, and
Yeah,
that's what I respect about Nurse Tech, that you create the community and you try to educate people what kind of different specialties there are. I was
yeah,
reading what do infusion nurses do, like what would
right,
experienced nurses want to know if they go back to the first year of
right,
nursing. I think those can be very enlightening and broaden your perspective and let people know that what situation you're in right now might not be the only option that you have.
right,
And there are people out there who are in the same shoes with you as you.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're huge about that, about just getting everybody in the same room, and
mm,
then the magic happens.
right.
Um, in healthcare in general, I know you said you were just involved with that hackathon.
Mm.
What were you seeing some of the trends that people are trying to work on, like big changes that are necessary for healthcare right now?
I think I'm an advocate for nursing mental health.
Yeah.
Like
Yay.
some things that we have like talked about, burnout, and like even for new nurses, they need support, and even for veteran nurses, they also need support.
Yeah.
And finding those holes and try to cover it up or with like support each other,
Hmm.
and who you work with and who you know as the people who do the same thing. I think it's really helpful, like in terms of your or mental health. So
Hmm.
you can talk to each other about certain things and you understand each other. The article that I was talking about, they didn't want to talk to their family members of what they were going through, like seeing death every day, because they were feeling that they're transferring those emotions to their loved ones.
Yeah.
And nurses get it, nurse like each other.
Right.
Right. So
Absolutely.
I think that's certainly an area that we can more focus on, and it's always going to be something that we will need.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I agree.
mm,
We've talked a little bit about community and spaces like Nurse Deck. Are you involved with any other nursing organizations or groups? Or just what are your general thoughts about community for nurses?
so I was a part of New England Korean Nurses Association when I
Oh,
was
cool.
in Boston while I was doing undergrad. That was a way for me to meet other Korean nurses.
Yeah.
And I was able to meet nurse practitioners, professors, and I learned what they do. And
Hmm.
having that role model
Yeah.
who have done it before you, and you see them and you think, oh, maybe I can be that person too. I think that's
Right.
something that can also help a nursing community.
Hmm.
Right. And right now, I write nursing blogs in Korean.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So people who want to come to the States to practice nursing, they
Hmm.
can learn what kind of challenges that we have, what
Yeah.
kind of different facilities or nursing fields we can practice in the States or in New York,
Yep.
what you can do with your nursing degree. Because I always thought that when I become a nurse, I'll work at bedside. But that's
Right.
not the only option, as you
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah.
So I write about that and what my students go through, that their challenges. So it's really interesting that like people can read it,
Hmm.
and and it's kind of rewarding for me too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sure. That's amazing. And I think it's so true because I think a lot of nurses see these different roles out there, but they
yeah,
can't envision themselves or they don't know how to connect the dots to
right,
get there.
right.
So to have someone say, all right, here's exactly what you do.
Hmm.
Here's what I did, or
Hmm.
here's the places you can go and talk to other people and find out what path they've followed to, become a nurse entrepreneur or a health coach or whatever.
Exactly,
So that, yeah, you don't have to see the bedside as like your be all end all. That's amazing.
exactly.
All right. Let's see. I think we're getting towards the end of our official questions here.
Okay.
Is there any topics you wanted to go over that we didn't, or resources for nurses that you think would be helpful? Um,
I wanted to mention one thing, um, that I see nursing role as in a different definitions. So I think a nurse is has to be a good communicator, a good negotiator, and a
mhm.
good team player.
Yes.
And I think many of us go to work and come back from work and don't really see that they're doing and partaking so many roles. But I also want to tell them that they're doing so much and affecting so many people's lives.
Yeah.
And hearing that can really help them empower
Yeah.
themselves. And I wanted my students and my colleagues and my coworkers to really tell themselves that they're doing really well.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
really
I
don't.
mean,
I'm like guilty of this too. When I was working in the ER, I always beat myself up for what did I not do? Like, what did
mhm.
I do wrong? But also, there's so many things that you're doing to help that patient,
Mhm.
whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, socially. So, I want nurses to tell themselves that they're doing really well, pat themselves in the shoulder, and empower
Yeah.
themselves.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So
It's
I
so
just
true though.
it
Think of how
is.
many times like someone catches your eye and they're like, "Hey, you're doing a great job." Like you feel like you're
Yeah.
gonna cry if you needed to hear that for a long time.
Yeah.
It's such a simple gesture, but I think it totally encapsulates like so much of what nursing is
Right.
and
Right.
so much of who nurses are. Um,
Exactly.
so I love that. I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up.
We
I'm
need to
not gonna
lift
say.
ourselves up.
Yes, yeah, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to take I think we see these, like, big major problems and we're like, they need big major solutions, and a lot of times it's just someone being like, "What you're going through is really hard and you're doing awesome." So,
Yes. Exactly.
I love that.
100%.
Are you on our Nurse Deck social site yet?
I don't think so. So I have been like following people.
Okay.
Yes. So how does that work?
So it's social.nursedeck.com, whereas our other site is just nursedeck.com. And there's links between the two to jump back and forth. But
Hmm.
it's a site for nurses. So you have to actually like provide your license to be able to be admitted to the site.
Hmm.
And it's just a collaborative social space. There's all different little niche groups within it.
Hmm.
And they're really, I mean, it's brand new. We've only been up and running for a matter of months. And
Okay.
all these little groups are really taking off now. So it's pretty
Mm.
cool to see kind of people dabbling in it and sort of dipping their toe in the water.
Mm.
But we just are trying to get as many voices as possible in there.
Okay.
And certainly a place like you could promote your blog, which I think is a great resource. And certainly people can find you on LinkedIn as well.
Mhm.
And we'll provide those links to this interview so people can follow your career and your messages, which I think is great.
Okay. Thank
So
you, Brianna.
yeah, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for
Um,
interviewing me.
yeah,
I enjoyed this
absolutely.
conversation.
Me too. Me too.